Ninjago is now officially part of LEGO Fortnite, and it's all thanks to the new Odyssey update, which not only introduced these 4 iconic ninja into the game, they also gave us unique designs for each one of them. And since LEGO hasn't made these designs into official LEGO minifigures yet, I've decided to make it my duty to create them myself. So let's go ahead and assemble all our characters. And with all our figures assembled, let's get started. I'll go ahead and get started with my favorite, Kai. I'll begin by etching all the parts in order to get them ready for painting. It does leave the surfaces pretty rough, but this way the paint sticks on better. Now unfortunately, because I don't have Kai's headband hairstyle, I'll have to settle with what I have. But due to it being in the complete wrong color, we'll have to paint it dark brown. Now with the easiest part out of the way, let's move on to the rest of the figure. I'll start off with the legs. I'll paint in the boots and the top of the hips. For the time being, we just want a strong base, without detail yet. That will come in later. So up next, we'll do the same for the torso. We'll paint in all our main black shapes. And only once those are filled, we can begin painting the much harder parts, which are the thinner lines. This requires a very steady hand, especially if you don't want to redo this over and over again. I also started painting the knot on Kai's belt, then the straps that hang downwards towards the leg. Not the cleanest lines at first, but we clean them up later, and look much better. Kai also has a pendant hanging off his belt, so we'll start to add that detail as well. With the main shapes mostly done, we can start working on the arms now. He has some wrappings going across his wrist, as well as his forearm. They'll be solid black for now, but we'll add the red highlights later. In the meantime though, let's begin adding all the gold details. I'll begin with the pendant on its leg, which came out pretty clean considering how small it is. But once that's done, I'll begin adding all the different gold highlights, which go across the leg, along both sides of the torso, of course the other leg, and near the neck. With all these details, our figure is definitely coming together, but one thing's missing: Kai's tiny little gold emblem. Surprisingly, it wasn't really that hard to paint this little star. The real hard part is painting a perfect circle around it, which you can see here I really struggled with. But once I got something I was happy with, I went ahead and added all the red highlights off camera to have an easier time. This includes all the lines on both arms, waist, and neck part. So now we can add our head and hair and take a look at our final results. Kai is now done. Because he's my favorite out of the 4 ninja, I definitely put extra effort into making sure he turned out great. And for the most part, I feel like I succeeded. The small lines on the torso came out pretty clean, and the dark red highlights on the arms gotta be my favorite detail, which is something I almost excluded thinking it wouldn't look good, but I definitely would say it helps the figure come together. Now, if we compare them side by side, there's some obvious inaccuracies. Most obvious of course being the hair, but it also excluded quite a bit of detail on the legs, just to have a design that's a little less busy. But moving on, now we have Zane. After removing the printing from both the torso and legs, I'll also begin with the easiest part, that being the hair. I'll have to sacrifice his unique orange hairpiece and paint the entire thing in silver. With that out of the way, I'll start with Zane's most complicated part, which is definitely the legs, due to all the different straps going along. I'll start with the black part of the shoes, then move on to the straps, which go across every which way. The leg design is definitely going to be quite busy, considering that we still have to add the ends of the belt. But we'll take a break for a bit and begin on the torso, which has black along each side, and has even more straps along the shoulders. Then there's a giant mechanical chest plate, which we will draw the outline of, and cover up with even more straps. With a bit of editing magic, I went ahead and completed all the main shapes. That way we can move on to the arms. The arms seem to have black sleeves closer to the shoulders, but have a hexagon shape in white, which I will later paint an emblem on, as well as the robotic details along the arm. But first, the emblem has a light blue outline, so let's go ahead and add that to both arms. With that done, let's start painting the lines in dark gray, which was simple enough, except on the other arm, there's a completely different design. But luckily, it wasn't too hard to draw. But for the sake of time, I went ahead and finished both arms off camera. That way, we can continue with the details on the torso. I began with all the light blue elements, which means we only have to paint the silver now. A few details later, we have the torso done. So now let's go ahead and complete the legs. We just need to paint the belt light blue, which really gives it a pop of color. And as extra detail, I'll go ahead and paint all these little pouches. And with that, all our elements are painted and completed. So let's assemble our robot and take a closer look. Zane is now complete. Going into this, I definitely thought Zane was going to be the most difficult ninja to paint. His design and line work just looks super busy, so admittedly I did have to simplify it a bit, but the result was actually pretty good, and quite rewarding as well. Some of the tinier details actually ended up being my favorite, like the panel on his left arm and the pouches. And when you compare it side by side, it's not too far off if you ask me. The main things I excluded were the tiny little outlines on each of the straps. It would have definitely taken multiple attempts to get right, but the main elements and ideas are there, so although it's not exact, I still think it got pretty close. But now next on the list we have coal. Similar to the previous times, we must remove all the printing off of these parts, so we'll start etching away. And again, first things first, the hair. I'll very quickly paint this one black. With the easy part out of the way, we can now begin on the torso. All the white elements you'll see will be later painted in orange, but first we must paint all the gray elements. With that done, Cole actually has a strap along the chest, which I painted black at first, then added a layer of light gray. This way, it's a little easier to implement those little gray highlights. So now that that's done, we can go ahead and paint the orange as I mentioned before. I just needed a base layer for the pigment to come through. Now, along the strap, there's a tiny little silver detail, so that's what I worked on next, which admittedly was pretty hard, but we got it done. But what was even harder was adding his Earth emblem in gold. I once again struggled painting a perfect circle, and much more with a tiny little emblem. After a couple attempts I managed to do it, so now all that's left are these thin black lines going towards the neck. And that's the torso done, which means we can now start painting the legs. Once again, for the belt, I need a white base layer. Once we have the shape we want, I can go ahead and paint it in orange. Now I can start painting in the shoes, which requires a lot of precision to make the soles. Which actually turned out pretty good for only one try. The rest of the legs still need some gray lines that I need to implement, so I continued with those. After that's done, the final element on the legs would be the silver armor plate that hangs on one leg, which was easily implemented with a couple lines and a bunch of silver dots, which means our legs are done. So now the final element to complete would be these silver gauntlets. I'll start drawing all the main shapes in black, as well as the straps, then fill in all the silver. I just need to make 2 of those, and now the arms are complete. So now we can go ahead and assemble our figure. And take a closer look. Cole is now complete. I wasn't too excited to make this one, simply due to the fact that his design looked pretty basic, at least in my opinion. But at least, he's probably the most accurate, as he was definitely the easiest to make. If we take a look at the side by side, I'd say this has to be the closest 1x1 rendition. Except for the most minute details, he's pretty damn close. So I would definitely say I'm very happy with how he came out. But now, the last figure we must tackle, Jay. You know the deal by now, we must remove all the printing, so let's etch the torso and legs, and leave them ready for painting. The biggest inaccuracy that we'll face when making this figure will be the cowl. The closest thing in my collection is this dark blue one, and with a fresh coat of paint, we'll get it a little closer to our goal. This time, I actually begin by painting in the arms. A very simple coat of black along the shoulders will do, as well as the wrists. With that, we'll come back later to add details. For now, I went ahead and started on the torso, painted all the basic shapes, as well as a couple straps and the drawstrings from his hood. But before painting the details, I wanted to get some progress on the legs. I started by painting the black boots, then the straps that go along the legs, a tiny pendant, even more straps, then the belt hanging off of the leg. with the knot coming in soon after. Now we can go ahead and implement some detail. I started by adding all the dark blue highlights, which definitely brought all this black into shape. With that done, it's time for the drawstrings and the buckles. I'll carefully draw in some thin white lines and tiny gold squares. And that actually finishes our torso. Not too bad. So we'll continue with the detail on the legs, which include dark blue highlights along each one of the straps. After that, Jay's belt is actually light blue, so I'll begin to paint that next, as well as a light blue highlight across the legs. We're nearly done with the legs. A detail I decided to exclude would be the sneaker design, but at the very least I still wanted to include the lightning bolts, so I added one to each foot and still included the white soles. An element we must not forget will be the emblem on the left shoulder. I painted a circle in light gray, then added an outer ring, which now allows us to add Jay's symbol. But that's actually the final thing we must paint, which means our figure is done, we can add our head and our mask, and take a closer look. Jay is now complete. Probably the most lackluster design out of all the ninja. Fortnite definitely did him dirty, at least so I thought, cause having him as a physical figure certainly changed my mind, cause he came out really cool. It's kinda hard to see all the detail in this figure, due to the black and dark blue pairing, but the highlights of gold and white along the shoes certainly give it a nice contrast of color, even if I excluded quite a bit. If we take a look at the side by side, it's honestly not too far off, except for the obvious incorrect hood piece, which I actually kept the white headband on, just cause I felt like it matched with the shoes and the drawstrings. But that is the end of the video. I really hope you enjoyed. These figures were honestly pretty tough to make, so I would really appreciate your support. Drop a like, comment, share, subscribe, all of that stuff. Even though they were challenging, I did have a lot of fun making these guys, so I hope you had fun watching. And let me know, which was your favorite, and which came out the best. I'm always curious to hear your thoughts. Anyway, that's everything. Bye for now.